Hey guys, tonight we step back into a time when your entire day revolved around one question: will you eat? You're not a knight, not a noble, not even a merchant. You're a medieval peasant. You live in a smoky, drafty cottage. The walls are made of wattle and daub, which sounds charming until you realize that means mud and sticks held together with animal dung. Outside, the ground crunches with frost. You wake to the sound of your stomach grumbling louder than the rooster. Your breath fogs in the morning air even though you're still under the covers, because medieval insulation is more wish than fact. You swing your legs over the edge of the straw mattress, careful not to crush the family chicken sleeping near your feet. It's not a pet. It's food. Eventually. Maybe. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments, where are you listening from, and what time is it where you are? Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wrap your only cloak around your shoulders and head to the hearth. The fire's dead. Of course, you poke at yesterday's ash with a stick, hoping for a coal with enough life to coax a spark. No luck. You're out of firewood, and the stack outside is encased in ice. So you settle for cold gruel. Again. It's not oatmeal. It's not even what you'd call soup. It's a beige sludge of barley and water, flavored faintly with despair. You stir it slowly with a wooden spoon, its bowl worn smooth from years of scraping bottom. This isn't breakfast, it's a negotiation. 1 bite, 2 bites. You tell yourself it's warm enough. It isn't, but it fills you, barely. There's no salt, no butter, and certainly no meat. The last time you saw meat was 3 Easters ago, and that was a stringy bone of pork shared among 8 people and 1 extremely hopeful dog. You glance outside. The ground's solid, the sky's gray. You don't need a calendar to know winter's grip hasn't loosened. And you don't need a doctor to tell you your bones ache from cold and malnutrition. Historians still argue whether the average medieval peasant was actually shorter due to diet or genetics. But as you stand up, back stiff and knees cracking, you'd bet your 1 good pair of shoes on the former. Today's to-do list is brutal in its simplicity. Survive. You've got fields to tend, even in winter. There's dung to clear and a fence to repair before the neighbor's goat figures out you have anything worth eating. Spoiler, you don't. But first, you chew the last bite of gruel, thick and gummy between your teeth, and think about the bread that isn't there. You miss bread, even bad bread, because what you'll learn soon is that medieval bread doesn't always come from grain. Sometimes it comes from bark, sometimes from acorns, and sometimes from ground-up mystery powders that are more than. Outside, the wind picks up, carrying with it a chill that makes your breath catch. You push open the door and brace yourself. You've made it another night. Congratulations. Your reward? A long day and maybe a handful of dried peas for supper. Still, there's something steady in this rhythm. The frost, the fireless mornings, the gruel. It teaches you patience, endurance, the kind of quiet pride that comes not from comfort, but from carrying on in its absence. And as you step into the day, your mind wanders just for a second to a memory. A feast once, seen through the manor's open door, roasted birds honey-glazed, wine poured into goblets, music, laughter. But that was their world. Yours is here, where the pottage is always thin, and the hunger never is. And yet, you keep going. You always do. You trudge across the frozen yard, past the single goat that's chewing on a shoe you gave up on last summer. It's not cold enough to kill you outright, but it's definitely cold enough to make you wish it would just get it over with. The field waits, hard and unyielding, a reminder that the land only loves you when it feels like it. Your stomach is already empty again, which is impressive, given how little you put in it. What you really want is bread, a thick, hearty loaf, maybe with crust so hard it cracks like a secret, something that feels solid in your hands, that doesn't slurp off a spoon or slosh around in a bowl. But here's the thing. Bread in your world is a bit of a gamble. When you finally do get some, at the market maybe, or if the baker owes your cousin a favor, it looks promising. Brown, crusty, even warm if you're lucky. But don't get too excited. That flour might be 50% ground rye and 50% not flour, because when wheat prices rise, and they always rise, people get creative. They add ground peas, old bran, tree bark, chalk, and sometimes even the sweepings from the mill floor. You once bit into a loaf and pulled out a splinter, not a twig, a splinter. Some unscrupulous bakers use ground bones, others sawdust. Technically edible, probably. The town baker swears he'd never cheat like that, of course. He'll pat his belly and say, "I'd rather die than serve bad bread." Joke's on him. Plenty of people do die from bad bread. There's this fun little thing called ergot, a mold that grows on rye when it gets too wet. You can't see it, you can't smell it, but eat enough of it, and suddenly you're dancing. Not like fun dancing, more like screaming into the sky as your fingers blacken kind of dancing. They call it Saint Anthony's fire, because when your limbs start to rot, you pray. Historians still argue whether entire villages were ever taken out by ergotism or if it was just a handful of isolated cases. But you've seen the twitching. You've heard the mumbling. You steer clear of the bread that looks too dusty. And yet you still want it. Bread isn't just food. It's currency. It's comfort. It's status. When a noble gives a peasant a crust, it's a favor. When a priest blesses the loaf, it's holy. When a miller cheats you of good flour, it's personal. The best bread is white, made with fine wheat flour and baked in an actual oven. But you've never had it. Not really. That's for the rich. The kind of people who use spices not to flavor food, but to show off that they can. Your bread is coarse, brown, baked in ashes or a fireless pit. Sometimes you make it yourself, kneading the dough with hands calloused from hauling water and chopping wood. You don't own an oven. Your house doesn't even have a chimney, just a smoke hole, and a prayer that the wind is feeling generous. Sometimes you trade with Matilda, the village widow who sells flatbread from her stoop. It's chewy and smells faintly of vinegar, but it's warm. She dips her crusts in weak ale and tells stories of when bread was real. You nod. Everyone nods. No one remembers. And sometimes, in lean times, when even barley runs short, you crush chestnuts, or acorns, or old dried peas. You mix them with water and pretend they're dough. They never rise. They never taste like bread. But you eat them anyway. One winter, the village tried using cattail roots, boiled, mashed, dried, and baked. It worked. If you define worked as didn't immediately kill anyone, you still remember the way it made your teeth squeak, like chewing linen dipped in glue. Bread is a battleground, a daily test, and it's personal. You remember the priest who scolded you for wasting crusts while sipping wine behind the altar. You remember the noble's dog that got better scraps than your baby sister. And you remember the time the bread was good. Just once. It was a wedding. Yours or your cousin's. The details blur, but the bread, fresh, warm, soft, lingers. Someone had saved up wheat. Someone had used butter. Someone had cared. It tasted like joy. You think of it now as your stomach folds in on itself, as the frost numbs your fingertips. That one bite made years of chewing bark and chalk feel almost worth it. Almost. You walk toward the village with a few spare eggs and a chipped bowl. Maybe someone will trade. Maybe there's bread worth eating. Maybe today's the day you get a real crust again. But if not, you'll chew bark. You'll grind peas. You'll stir the pot and hope. Because tomorrow always needs feeding. The village stirs as the sun squints over the hills, casting a grayish gold across thatch roofs and muddy lanes. Smoke slinks from crooked chimneys, and you can already hear the clatter of buckets near the well. You follow the ruts in the road with your goat in tow, hoping someone's feeling generous, or at least guilty, enough to trade a crust for your sad little eggs. But first, you make a stop. Not at the market, not at church. No, you're going to see Branwen the alewife. Branwen's house always smells like damp straw and yeast, sharp and sweet, like someone spilled beer on a warm stone and walked away. It's the kind of scent that lodges itself into your clothes, your hair, and your memories. She greets you with a tired smile and a hand on her lower back. Barley's weak this season, she mutters, but it'll fill the gaps. The gaps. That's what she calls hunger. The hollow hours between your first and last bite of the day. The ache behind your ribs. Gaps. Sounds poetic until you're living inside one. You step inside her brew hut, which is half kitchen, half cauldron shrine. The ale's still fermenting in a wide wooden vat, its surface frothing with life. Flies hover like drunk pilgrims. You swat them absently and hand over the eggs. Fair trade, Branwen says, pouring a clay cup full of warm ale. It's cloudy, bitter, and flat, but it's wet. And honestly, that's half the battle. Ale in your world isn't a luxury. It's hydration. Clean water is mostly a myth. Wells can sour, streams get fouled by animals or worse, and even rainwater tastes like it's auditioning for a mold colony. Ale, though, ale is boiled, fermented, safe-ish. You sip. It tastes like regret and wood smoke. Branwen sighs. They inspected me again last week. You nod. You've heard the whispers. The local ale taster, appointed by the manor, not God, dropped by for a surprise check. Said her brew was thin. Said the foam died too fast. Said she was watering it down. And maybe she is. Maybe not. Doesn't matter. Alewives always get blamed when things go sour. Literally. Historians still argue whether women like Branwen were unfairly targeted because of gender, or because bad ale could spread disease and despair like wildfire. Probably both. You look around. The wooden ladle she uses is cracked. The buckets leak. The firewood is damp. And still, she brews. Day after day. Pint after pint. Because if she doesn't, someone else will. Someone worse. There's talk of a man from the next village over, Eldrick, with eyes like a hawk and a tongue like vinegar, who wants her stall at market. Says women shouldn't be trusted with barley. Says he can brew better, stronger, faster. But he doesn't offer credit to hungry families. He doesn't let kids sleep by the hearth while their parents drink away the frost. He doesn't care about the gaps. You drink slowly, letting the warmth crawl down your throat and into your chest. Your stomach, empty and suspicious, accepts it grudgingly. It's not food exactly, but it'll hold the line for another hour. Outside, someone shouts. Then laughter. Branwen barely flinches. Boys throwing turnips again, she mutters, wasting what they'll beg for in a month. You leave the empty cup on a shelf and thank her. She nods but doesn't smile this time. On your way out, you notice something scratched into the door frame, a faint sigil. Protective, maybe. Old. Probably something passed down from a grandmother who believed in charms more than saints. You don't ask about it. You just notice. And remember. Because when the tithes rise, and the weather fails, and the ale is thin again, people look for someone to blame. The woman with the fire and the froth is easy to spot. You walk back down the lane with that bitterness still on your tongue. Your fingers tighten around your cloak as the wind lifts. In the distance, the church bell tolls. Noon. You pass a group of children sitting on a low wall, legs swinging, faces sticky with boiled plum paste. You almost smile. Almost. Then one of them starts coughing, a dry, rattling sound that's too familiar, too loud. You keep walking. That ale didn't last long. You already feel the gap stretching open again. The bakery's smoke smells sweet, though. Tempting. You count the last thing in your pocket, a crooked turnip, soft on one side, and consider your odds. You're still weighing the trade when a voice calls out behind you. Hey, you! Want to taste real beer? You turn. It's Eldrick, of course. He stands behind a cart of kegs with a grin too wide and confidence that somehow both earned and unbearable. He hands you a wooden cup. The ale's golden crisp, even sparkling a little in the light. You sip. It's good. Too good. You narrow your eyes. You didn't make this. He shrugs. Does it matter? It does. But you don't argue. You just hand it back and walk on. Branwen's brew might be cloudy, thin, bitter, but it's hers. And she doesn't lie about what's in it. And when the winter bites harder and the well goes foul, and the priest blesses the buckets, but they still smell like frogs, you'll remember who gave you a cup without asking for silver. The alewife, the survivor, the scapegoat, the keeper of the brew. You leave the village behind as your boots squelch through mud, barely thawed. The fields stretch ahead, gray, brittle, and unforgiving. You trudge on, passing fences stitched together with hope and rotting twine. Somewhere nearby, a pig grunts. That's not just any pig. That's your pig. Or at least half of it, if the manor reeve asks. You find it wallowing near the collapsed side of the pen again, nose deep in muck. You sigh and tug at your hood as if it'll protect you from the smell. It doesn't. Medieval pigs don't smell like fairy tales. They smell like a gamble between bacon and plague. The pig glances up at you with the casual indifference of someone who knows you can't afford to lose it. It's a lifeline on 4 legs. If it makes it through winter, you might have meat by spring. If it doesn't, well, stew. Early stew. You set to work fixing the fence with splinters and curses. Your hands sting in the cold, cracked skin, burning as you twist rope and stuff gaps with straw. You can't afford tools. You are the tool. Behind you, the cottage smokes again. Not from the hearth, but from the waste pile where last week's spoiled grain smolder slowly. You dumped it after a rat died mid-nibble. Coincidence? Maybe. But you're not betting the family intestines on it. You glance toward the outhouse. Wait. No outhouse. Just the copse of trees beyond the field, muddy with use and secrecy, Sanitation here is a game of out of sight, out of illness, and let's just say, you're losing. The truth is, you share your space with more than pigs. You share it with lice, fleas, sometimes mice, sometimes worse. The thatch above your head is not just roof, it's ecosystem. And at night, when the fire dies and your family sleeps in one heaving pile for warmth, the scratching begins. You'd complain, but who would listen? Everyone scratches, everyone stinks. Baths are a rare luxury. Soap is for priests, perfume is for nobles, and water that doesn't give you boils is very seasonal. Historians still debate how often medieval people actually bathed. Some sources claim once a week, others say once a year. Based on your armpits, you'd guess the truth lies somewhere closer to when it rains and you trip into a stream. You duck inside to grab more rope and catch your mother coughing in the corner. Not the dramatic, dying kind of cough, just the ever-present, smoky, we live with fire and breath and ashes kind. You're used to it. You grew up on coughs. You glance at the ceiling. The smoke hole leaks in the wrong direction again, so the room's filled with a gentle haze of regret and wood ash. There's a pot on the hearth, but nothing in it, just waiting. Like always, the pig squeals outside again. You hurry back, because here's the thing. Pigs don't just smell, they draw attention. You've seen it before, a reeve passing by, inspecting the livestock, a hungry neighbor with too few chickens and too many children. One wrong night, and your pig becomes everyone's pig. So you built a sleeping pen for it. Inside the cottage, near the fire, right next to your brother. Actually, he complains, but you told him the pig snores less. And it does. Barely. It's not weird here. Animals and people share space. You sleep with the pigs. The chickens roost in the rafters. One summer, a goat lived under the table for 2 months. You named it Barbara. Then you ate it. At least livestock keep you warm. Better than the fire most nights. You curl around them like awkward puzzle pieces, everyone chasing body heat and pretending not to notice the snoring or the occasional mysterious damp spot. There's no privacy, not for washing, not for weeping, and definitely not for wedging a sliver out of your heel with a fishbone while someone gives birth on the other side of the room. And yet, you survive. Somehow you survive the filth, the cold, the ceaseless scratching. You learn to live with the rot and the rashes. You learn to count the symptoms and guess whether it's plague or just a really bad pimple. You survive the latrine that freezes in winter and becomes a swamp in spring. You survive the water that smells like iron and tastes like secrets. You survive sharing your life with pigs because pigs don't judge. You fix the fence, drive the pig back into the pen, and tie the gate with a prayer and half a bootlace. As you wipe your hands on your tunic, already filthy, but you tell yourself it helps. The wind shifts. The village bell rings once. Supper hour, which is generous because supper is generous. Or will be, if you stretch that carrot enough. You sigh, roll your shoulders, and head inside again. The room is smoky, your mother's still coughing, and your brother is arguing with the pig over floor space. But you have a carrot, and some old barley, maybe even a few peas left from last week's trade. Tonight, you'll make stew. It'll taste like smoke and mud, and it'll be amazing. The stew simmers low over the hearth, and you sit beside it like a dragon guarding treasure. It's barely more than warm water with ambition, but it smells like hope, earthy, faintly sweet, with that telltale punch of onion peel and something you're pretty sure is moss. No one complains. Complaints don't make food appear. Your family gathers around slowly, drawn by the scent, or maybe just the illusion of it. Your mother stirs with the slow, practiced rhythm of someone who's done this thousands of times. Your brother tosses in a few withered leaves he claims are herbs. They're probably weeds. It doesn't matter. By the time you eat, the sun is gone and the walls of the cottage glow orange from firelight. You eat in silence, sipping around pebbles, dodging splinters, chewing with deliberate patience. You stretch each bite, willing your body to believe it's full. And just for a second, you are warm. Then the wind howls through the thatch. Again. But it's fine. It's always fine. Because tonight, you heard something strange, something rare, a rumor. The lord of the manor is hosting a feast, a proper one, meat, pastries, ale that doesn't come from Branwen's smoky hut. And you might get close enough to see it. The manor sits on a low hill outside the village, behind a stone wall and past two perfectly bored guards. It's not a castle exactly, but it wants to be. You've only been inside once. Years ago, when you were dragged in to explain how your goat ended up in the herb garden, you claimed divine intervention. It didn't work. Now, the thought of a feast draws you like the smell of baked apples through a cracked door. You tell yourself it's just curiosity, but really it's hunger. Not just the belly kind, the soul kind. So you go. At dusk the next day, you walk the long curve of the hill road, keeping your distance but close enough to see torchlight flicker through high windows. Inside, it's everything you imagined. Gold and fire, boars with apples in their mouths, saffron-laced pies, turkeys stuffed with cherries and venison glistening beneath rosemary sprigs. A harp sings softly in the corner, while a nobleman in red silk picks a trout apart with jeweled fingers. You know it's trout, because the smell floats out the open window and punches you right in the childhood. You crouch behind a bush with a few other villagers, eyes wide, mouths open, as the feast unfolds. You don't talk, you don't move, you just watch. The nobles laugh too loudly. They eat too much. They toss bones to hounds that eat better than you do. You know you should leave, but you don't. Because right now, watching them eat is the closest thing to being full. And yet, not everything is perfect in paradise. You spot a servant carrying a plate of glistening grapes and slipping on the stone step. The plate crashes. Grapes scatter like marbles. The laughter turns sharp. The noblewoman who ordered them waves her hand like swatting a fly. The servant scrambles, face pale, fingers fumbling. Then someone coughs. Not a polite cough. A wet, body-shaking cough. The room stills. Eyes shift. You blink. The nobleman in red drops his goblet. The wine stains his silk. He tries to stand, then falls. Hard. And the harp doesn't stop. Historians still argue whether medieval nobles died more from gluttony or disease. But standing there, you feel certain it's both. A moment later, the window shutters slam shut. The feast continues behind closed walls, but something's changed. You walk back down the hill slowly, your stomach tighter than before, because sometimes the rich die faster. Too much wine, too much raw meat, too much everything. You reach the cottage and find your brother asleep with the pig again. You smile faintly and stir the fire, just enough for warmth. That night, you dream of roasted pears and sharp cheese and hands that don't shake when they eat, but also of red silk, and a coughing fit, and the sound of a goblet hitting stone. You wake up hungry and relieved. You didn't eat the trout. Winter sharpens its teeth. The wind no longer howls, it scrapes. Your breath fogs in thick puffs, curling like ghosts around your face. The ground crunches underfoot, hard as iron. This is the season that doesn't ask, it takes. And now, it's time to fight back. Because once the first frost settles in, your daily job becomes less about eating and more about preserving. You're not just feeding yourself today, you're trying to feed yourself 2 moons from now. Maybe 3, maybe longer if the thaw is late and cruel, which it often is. So you pickle, you salt, you dry, smoke, bury, hang, and hope. The cottage is transformed into a medieval pantry by necessity. Onions braid down from the ceiling like garlands of desperation. Cabbages sit in baskets, grumpy and wilting, but technically alive. A string of fish hangs near the hearth, drying into something vaguely edible. They stare at you like martyrs. Out back, in the pit you dug with your uncle's rusty spade, sit jars of pickled turnips, wild leeks, and a few mystery roots you're hoping weren't poisonous. You buried them in straw, layered with salt, and whispered prayers to saints you don't usually remember unless desperate. This is what passes for security. You glance over at your mother, who's scrubbing the inside of a clay pot with sand and snow. It's so cold her knuckles bleed, but she doesn't stop. That pot holds what's left of last spring's sauerkraut. If you can salvage it, you'll mix it with dried peas for stew. If not, watered ale and stubborn optimism again. Preserving food isn't just survival, it's strategy. Your neighbor, Old Thomas, swore by storing smoked eel under his floorboards. Then the rats swore by it too. Now he swears at everything. Historians still argue whether medieval people understood mold the way we do. Probably not. But you've got a nose for doom. One sniff of that wrong, sour edge, and it's straight into the compost, or the pig's bowl, if you're feeling heartless. Some days, you barter for things you can't grow. Salt, for instance, worth its weight in pain. The salt merchant from town always arrives with an entourage and attitude, his cart guarded like it carries gold. And, in a way, it does. One year, your family gave up 3 chickens for a single sack. It lasted till midsummer. The chickens didn't. And then there's smoking. It's not fancy. It's not efficient. But when you hang a strip of meat, or even fish, or mushrooms, above the fire and let it harden over time, it becomes something different. Not tasty, but safe. Safer than stew, safer than wishful thinking. You remember the first time you tried smoked rabbit. You were 6. It was tough as leather and twice as chewy. But it was warm. And warm in your world is always enough. Sometimes, in a burst of community spirit or collective panic, the village holds a pickling day. Everyone brings what they have. Buckets, barrels, herbs, roots. Sometimes even fruit, if someone's luck held during foraging season. The women argue over vinegar ratios. The men argue about nothing just to feel useful. Children steal slices of radish and run squealing through the snow. It smells terrible, like sour socks and old wine. But there's something sacred in it too. You spend the day elbow deep in brine, stuffing jars and pots, tying cloth lids, sealing dreams in salt and hope. You sing old songs. You listen to stories. You warm your fingers on the side of the boiling cauldron and pretend it's enough. Someone always brings too much garlic. Someone always forgets the caraway seeds. Someone always drinks too much and falls asleep in the straw with beet juice on their chin. It's tradition. One year, Branwen showed up with an entire barrel of pickled eggs. No one asked how she got them. No one wanted to. She winked and said, "Don't trust a chicken who lays in winter." You're still not sure what she meant, but you ate the eggs. And they were good. Tonight, you sit beside your winter stash, taking inventory. You count turnips like they're coins. You tap jars like they might whisper back, because every cabbage matters. Every smoked strip is a small rebellion. You are building a fortress against the cold. And you know, not everyone will win this fight. Last year, 3 families lost their entire stores to rats. 1 forgot to salt the fish properly. 2 more just underestimated. They begged. They traded. They went without. 1 didn't make it. You remember. You always remember. So you stack your jars carefully. You hang your herbs high. You mend the smokehouse roof, even though your fingers go numb before you finish. Because spring is still months away, and hunger never hibernates. The sky is a slab of slate again this morning. No sun, no shadow, just the steady sigh of wind pressing against your door like a beggar. You wake up in a tangle of limbs, straw, and pig snout. Someone's elbow is in your ribs, possibly yours. You blink, you stretch, you ache in places that don't have names. And your first thought, as always, what's for breakfast? Answer, whatever hasn't frozen solid. Today it's pottage. Again. The leftovers of last night's leftovers, thinned with snow and hope. You stir it carefully, trying not to break the crust of ice forming at the edges. It's grayish now, tinged with the ghost of a turnip and maybe a distant whisper of barley. As you sip, you realize something's off. You're bored, not with the food, that's a given, but with the rhythm. Hunger, stir, chew, repeat. So you do something bold. You decide to forage. There's not much left out there, but you heard rumors. Yes, again, from an old woman whose teeth whistle when she talks. She says mushrooms are still growing in the woods near the monastery. Strange ones, winter mushrooms, survivors. You're no fool. Foraging in winter is like treasure hunting in a graveyard. But what if? You strap on your boots, wrap your scarf twice around your face, and head out. The woods are quieter than usual, muffled by frost and stories. Trees groan in the wind. Snow clings to their bark like lichen. You step carefully, eyes scanning the undergrowth. And after an hour, just when your toes start to fade from memory, you see them. Mushrooms, tiny bone white, growing in a half moon around the base of a dead elm. They look like teeth, which is ironic, considering what might happen if you eat the wrong ones. You kneel, you sniff, you hesitate. Historians still argue whether medieval peasants really knew which mushrooms were safe. Some say knowledge passed down through families. Others believe most people just guessed and prayed. You're not in the mood for a coin toss with your intestines, so you pluck 2, wrap them in cloth, and head toward the monastery. It's a risk. The monks don't like visitors, but they do love mushrooms. The path is narrow and cruel. Your breath hitches with every step, but soon the monastery walls rise from the mist, massive, moss-covered, and solemn. You knock. A narrow window slides open, 2 eyes peer out. No greeting. You hold up the cloth bundle and say, "Gift." The window closes. You wait. Then, surprise, the door creaks open. Inside, it's dim and warm. The air smells of wax, ink, and something savory. The monk who answers you is older than dust, wrapped in robes that swish like parchment. He takes the mushrooms with a nod and beckons you to follow. Down the corridor you go, past flickering sconces and shelves of books you can't read. Eventually, you reach a kitchen. An actual kitchen, with herbs hanging from beams, with garlic bulbs fat as apples, with cheese drying on racks, and in the center, a pot bubbling with something that smells divine. The monk ladles you a bowl. It's soup, real soup, with chunks, with flavor, with salt. You almost cry. You eat like you're being watched by saints. The monk says nothing, just smiles faintly and pours you water that tastes like it's never even heard of frogs. You learn something important that day. Monks eat well. They grow their own herbs. They bake daily. They raise chickens, even bees. And they record it all. Every measurement, every recipe, every substitution when supplies run low. Their kitchens are part lab, part chapel. One friar explains they even make their own cheese, soft curds pressed with linen, aged in stone cellars. It takes months, sometimes years. Patience makes flavor, he says. You nod like that's not a completely foreign concept. They pickle carrots in spiced wine. They candy plums in honey. They dry lavender for tea. And yes, mushrooms. A whole shelf of them, sorted, labeled, some even powdered for winter sauces. You're in awe. This isn't just survival, this is culinary strategy. And it's protected by walls. Thick, stone, privilege-soaked walls. You leave with a small pouch of dried herbs and a head full of impossible dreams. The monk even presses a coin into your hand. For the mushrooms, he says, and closes the door before you can thank him. You walk home lighter, hungrier, wiser, because now you know there is another way to eat, a better way. But it's hidden, gated, guarded. You reach your cottage. The smoke hole wheezes. The pig snores. You unwrap the herbs and drop a pinch into tonight's pottage. The scent rises like magic. Your brother raises an eyebrow. Your mother blinks. "What is that?" she asks. You shrug. "Hope," you say. And, for once, it tastes real. The next morning, you wake up to birdsong, which is confusing because it's February, and no sane bird should be out right now. You sit up slowly, rubbing your eyes with fingers that still smell faintly of dried thyme and mushroom soup memory. There it is again. A chirp. You listen harder, not just birds. Bells. Distant church bells, layered over excited voices and cartwheels clattering on frozen stone. Something's happening. You throw on your cloak and push out the door, the cold biting your cheeks like a jealous ghost. A crowd is already forming near the village square. Everyone's talking at once, and you can smell something on the air. Not smoke, not stew. Meat. Real meat. You push closer and spot a wagon parked in front of the Manor Reeves hut. On it, barrels, bundles of cloth, crates of turnips, and, yes, 2 whole pigs, gutted and glistening, strung up like trophies. The Lord is throwing a market day. It happens maybe once or twice a year when taxes are collected, supplies traded, and those with favors to curry suddenly remember the existence of peasants. You grab what little you have, a wool cap with decent stitching, a chunk of salt pork from last month's barter, and a bundle of dried mint. Not much, but maybe enough. The market is already wild. Vendors shout, chickens squawk, dogs bark, and someone is singing about beans. It's a chaos made holy by the scent of roasting meat and freshly baked loaves from the manor ovens. And there, near the edge, sits Matilda the Pie Woman. Her cart leans slightly, like it's also hungry, but it holds pies, actual pies, wrapped in linen and radiating the kind of smell that makes grown men weep. You hover. Matilda eyes you. Got anything decent? You offer your pork. She sniffs, shrugs, trades you half a pie. You hold it in your hands like a holy relic. The crust is uneven but golden. The filling, a mix of onion, egg, and something unidentifiable, steams gently. You take a bite. It's warm, savory, software. And for a second, you don't feel like a peasant. You feel like a person. As you chew, you wander past the other stalls. A man with beets as big as your head. A woman selling pickled eels from a clay jug. A boy trying to trade wool socks for sweets. There's even a spice merchant. He's the real deal. Coat lined with rabbit fur, rings on every finger, and a pouch of cinnamon he guards like it's treasure, which, in a way, it is. You watch as a noblewoman buys a sliver of saffron no bigger than your thumb for the price of an entire goat. Historians still debate how widespread spice use really was outside noble circles. Some say even peasants used them sparingly. Pepper, mustard seed, dried parsley. Others say that's wishful thinking. All you know is, the closest you've come to pepper is coughing near the Reeves table. Still, you linger. The merchant eyes you. Curious? You nod. He grins and flicks a few mustard seeds into your palm. Here, for your pie. You don't ask why. You just sprinkle. And somehow, that one act, that tiny yellow burst, transforms your pie into something new. Not just edible, interesting, flavor. You'd almost forgotten what that was. You finish the pie slowly, letting each bite stretch like silk. Then the crowd parts, and a man stumbles forward, clutching his belly. He's gray-faced, sweating, knees buckling. He collapses. Panic ripples through the square. People shout. The spice merchant bolts. Matilda covers her pies. Someone whispers, "Meat gone off." Another, "Spoiled stew." And then someone else, "Witchcraft." Because, of course, when things go wrong, people look for shadows, for scapegoats, for someone who looks a little too calm, or a little too clean, or a little too herbal. You back away slowly. You know what this is. Last winter, the same thing happened in a neighboring village. 3 children died after drinking spoiled milk. By the end of the week, their midwife was hanging from a tree. Historians still argue whether these accusations were spontaneous panic or orchestrated control tactics. In real life, it doesn't matter. The result is always the same. Someone pays. So when the Reeve starts questioning vendors, you vanish. You duck behind a barrel of leeks. You slip through the side alley behind the blacksmith shop. You do not look back. You've had your pie. You've had your mustard miracle. Now it's time to go home. You step into your cottage just as your brother burns his fingers on the stew pot. He curses in 3 languages and throws a spoon at the wall. The pig grunts in approval. You sit, you breathe. You're safe. But the market lingers in your mind. The spice, the meat, the man who fell. You don't know if it was poison, rot, or fear. You just know tomorrow people will talk, and someone's name will be spoken with a little too much certainty. You glance at your dried mint bundle. You hide it in the wall, just in case. Morning breaks not with sunlight, but with suspicion. The market is over, but its ghosts still haunt every doorstep. You hear it in the murmurs outside your cottage, in the way Branwen doesn't wave today, in how the children suddenly stop laughing when you walk past. Whispers cling to you like soot. Did you see what she traded for that pie? She's always poking around herbs. Monks gave her coin. That's unusual, isn't it? You try not to listen, but it's hard to ignore the shift in the air when it's slicing across your name. It's not just you. The pie woman's cart was found burned behind her shed this morning. She's fine, angry but breathing. The meat seller is gone, vanished. Some say he fled. Some say he was helped. No one knows what happened to the man who collapsed, but the fear that stayed behind built itself a nice little home inside every head. You keep your eyes down, your movements slow, and still they watch. So you do the only thing that makes sense. You go back to the woods, back to the quiet, back to the moss, back to something that doesn't accuse. You wander deeper this time, past the monastery path, past the bramble patch where you lost a shoe last summer, past reason, and there, nestled beneath a half-fallen log, you find something strange, a ring of dark purple mushrooms, almost black. They pulse faintly in the frost light, like they're breathing. You stare, you step closer, then movement, a bird, number A woman. She's crouched nearby, half hidden under her hood, gathering roots into a basket lined with sheepskin. Her face is old, sharp, and unreadable. She sees you. You freeze. She nods, and then calmly she asks, "You looking for flavor or medicine?" You blink. "Both?" She chuckles. "Aren't we all?" You edge closer, curiosity outweighing caution. She picks up a crooked root and hands it to you. "Angelica," she says. "Good for digestion, bad for secrets." You smile faintly. "You live out here?" She shrugs. "Out here lives better than in there." You don't ask her name. She doesn't ask yours. But as the sun shifts overhead, you sit together in silence, sharing a strip of dried pear she pulled from her sleeve like a magician. It tastes of old summers and strange comfort. She teaches you the names of what's edible, what's lethal, and what's uncertain. Historians still argue about how much folk knowledge peasants had regarding plants. Some believe it was extensive, passed down through generations. Others think most people relied on luck and hearsay. Sitting here with this woman who speaks to leaves like siblings, you'd wager on the former. Eventually, she stands. "Here," she says, passing you a bundle of herbs tied with red thread. "Steep this in warm ale when the coughing starts." But only once. Twice is trouble. You nod, not understanding all of it, but trusting her more than any priest with soft hands and no dirt beneath the nails. She vanishes into the trees, cloak melting into branches. You walk home slower this time, not because your legs ache, though they do, but because you're thinking about flavors, about warnings, about names whispered too loudly in the dark. You reach your cottage, your brother's carving a stick into something knife-shaped. Your mother is asleep by the hearth, wrapped in every blanket you own. The pig is chewing your boot. Again, you hang the herb bundle carefully from a ceiling beam. Somewhere high, somewhere safe. That night, dinner is just broth, but you add a few leaves from the forest, just a pinch. The flavor is different, not rich, but real. Your brother notices. "What's in this?" You smile. "Nothing that bites." And for the first time in days, he laughs. You go to bed feeling like maybe the whispers can't reach you here. Maybe knowledge is power. Maybe that woman in the woods is just a hermit, and not a witch, and not a ghost, and not a trap waiting to spring. Maybe. Because the truth is, people like her, people like you, have always lived in the shadows of history, feeding, foraging, curing, and being blamed for things beyond their control. But tonight, you sleep with a smile, because you've tasted something new, and you're not afraid of flavor anymore. The cold eases just a little, and suddenly everyone starts pretending it's spring. You hear it in the tone of the blacksmith's hammer, in the way your neighbor opens his window for the first time in weeks, in your mother's hopeful comment, "Might not need the extra log tonight." But you know better. This is fall spring, a medieval classic. A few golden rays, a few happy chickens, and then, bam! Snow drifts deep enough to erase goats. Still, hope is a powerful hallucinogen. You begin preparing the garden bed. Not planting yet, of course, just poking at the dirt to see if it still hates you. It does. You scrape back frost and find worms, tiny, pale, slightly offended at being disturbed. You take that as a good sign. And while you work, you plan. Because now that you've seen the monastery kitchen, now that you've sipped flavored broth and touched dried pears like edible treasure, you can't go back. Not fully. You start drawing up mental recipes like a battle plan. Maybe a stew with mint. Maybe bread with onion skins mixed into the dough. Maybe, someday, something spiced. Historians often debate the creativity of peasant cooks. Some insist food was purely functional, a fuel without flair. But you've learned otherwise. Necessity may be the mother of invention, but hunger is the father of culinary improvisation. You're thinking about a soup made with burdock root when your neighbor Edith stops by. She's got 3 kids and no husband, and her cloak smells like wet firewood and secrets. "You've been foraging," she says bluntly. You pause. She raises an eyebrow. "I'm not accusing. I'm asking." You nod slowly. Her face softens. "Show me." And that's how it begins. The next morning, you lead her to the woods. Not deep, just enough. You point out the herbs. The wild garlic shoots barely sprouting. The bark you've learned to peel just right for tea. She listens, really listens. And when you offer her a sprig of chickweed, she bites into it without flinching. By evening, word spreads. Quietly, 2 more women join you the next day. Then 4, then 6. Not all want herbs. Some want advice. Some want a trade. Some just want to sit on a rock in peace and remember they're more than blisters and chores. You form an accidental circle, not quite a guild, not quite a coven, just women with dirt under their nails and ideas in their heads. You teach each other tricks. How to dry nettle without losing your fingerprints. How to disguise wild onions so the reeve doesn't claim them. How to make something taste like salt using roasted dandelion roots and blind confidence. You all laugh more than expected. You begin writing things down, not words. Few can read, but symbols. A leaf means fever. A swirl means stew. A spiral with dots. That's the burdock root and turnip miracle from 2 weeks ago. You carve them into wood, scratch them into pots, whisper them to each other when passing in the lane. It's dangerous, and you all know it, but it's also life, and it's delicious. One day, you wake to find a basket on your doorstep. Inside, a wedge of cheese, half a loaf of brown bread, and a tiny vial of what smells like vinegar and rosemary. No note, no explanation, just a single red thread tied around the handle. You smile. The pig tries to eat the thread. You slap its snout gently. You store the bread, share the cheese, mix the vinegar into stew. It tastes like victory. And just like that, you realize something extraordinary. You are not just surviving anymore. You are creating. You are connecting. You are seasoning your days with more than salt and repetition. You go to bed that night with a full belly and a brain humming with flavor combinations. Lavender and honey, mint and bean mash, wild sorrel wrapped in flatbread like the monks do. The pig snores beside you. Your brother dreams aloud about dancing pies. Your mother breathes deeply, for once not coughing. Outside, the wind rises again. False spring, remember. But inside, you feel warmth not even firewood can offer. It's the warmth of community, of herbs traded in secret, of women gathering not to gossip but to grow, of symbols scratched into wood with purpose. Flavor, it turns out, was never just about the food. It was about knowing what to do with what little you have and sharing it anyway. You pull the blanket up higher, and for once, you don't dread tomorrow. You hunger for it. You wake to shouting, not angry shouting, excited shouting. You stumble out into the chilly morning mist and squint toward the road. A crowd is gathered, not large, not frantic, just curious, focused on the single figure trotting up the muddy path, cloak flapping like a broken sail. He's riding a donkey, already suspicious, more curious. The cart behind him. It creaks, clinks, and smells. Not bad. Not like dung or cabbage. No, this smell is strange, sharp, sweet, a little spicy. You inhale without meaning to. Cinnamon, clove, maybe nutmeg. The rider hops down. He's short, thick-bearded, and dressed like a traveling magician, layered tunics in faded crimson, a belt full of pouches, a dagger with a hilt shaped like a pepper grinder. "Greetings, fine people of wherever I am," he declares. "I bring the East to your doorstep." A child throws a rock at his boot. Undeterred, he opens the cart like a treasure chest. Spices. Real ones. Dried orange peels curled like question marks. Star anise. Shaped like witch symbols. Bay leaves stacked like brittle prayer scrolls. A pinch of saffron in a corked vial. The color of sunset and indulgence. The villagers gasp. And you. You drift closer, eyes wide, nose first. You've read about spice traders in the monastery's scribbled margins, heard tales of fortunes made from pepper alone. But seeing it here, in your muddy little village, is like watching a comet land in a cabbage field. The trader spreads his arms. A sniff for free, a sprinkle for silver. No one has silver. He shrugs and starts bartering. Eggs, wool, a surprisingly fine carved spoon, a single shoe. You hesitate. Then you offer what little you have. 2 bundles of dried mint, 1 wild garlic bulb, and a wrapped piece of beeswax you'd been saving for candles. He examines them like a jeweler, then nods. Fair. He passes you a pouch of ground cinnamon, maybe a tablespoon's worth. You clutch it like it's cursed treasure. And just like that, the village changes. Everything smells like ambition. Stew is no longer just warm, but curious. Porridge, now with a dash of something mysterious and vaguely foreign. Flatbreads baked on stones start turning golden and aromatic. Even Branwen's ale tastes interesting. People begin talking about recipes again. About flavor, not just survival. About pleasure. And, of course, about the spice merchant, because not everyone trusts him. He didn't bless the trade. His boots are too clean. He smiled at the pig. You're not surprised. Suspicion is a currency here, but so is envy. And the man does have a habit of slipping into shadows and showing up exactly where he shouldn't. You once found him behind your cottage, admiring your herb stash. "You've got a nose," he said, tapping his own. "Ever thought about drying angelica with honey? Keeps longer, sells better." You didn't answer. He laughed and vanished, leaving behind a faint scent of nutmeg and secrets. Still, his trade thrives. And then, just as suddenly, he's gone. One morning, his cart is empty. The donkey is chewing grass by the river. No note, no goodbye. Historians still argue whether spice traders were wandering opportunists or state-sponsored agents of early empire. Some were both. You're not sure which kind this one was, but you know this. His impact lingers, because now Everything tastes different. You try the cinnamon that night, just a pinch in the lentil soup. It burns slightly, then sweetens, then disappears, leaving behind warmth that isn't fire. Your brother goes silent after the first spoonful. Then, "What is this?" You smile, and for once, you don't answer. The next day, you gather with the others in the clearing, your herb circle, your fellowship of flavor. You pass around the pouch, sharing sprinkles like they're relics. And Edith says, "We should grow something new this year." You all look at each other. It's a dangerous idea, because new means foreign, new means suspicious, new means blamable, but it also means possibility. You nod slowly. "Let's try." That night, you fall asleep with cinnamon on your tongue and a dream in your chest that smells nothing like stew or soot or disappointment. It smells like orange peel and courage. The first thaw always brings lies. The ground softens just enough to tease your boots into thinking it's safe. The sky glows like someone's warming up the sun, and everyone walks around pretending their joints don't still ache like betrayal. But this year, something is different. You wake up earlier, not from cold, but anticipation, because it's planting season. Not full planting, not yet. The soil's still clingy, like a toddler who doesn't want to let go of winter. But you can start. Little things, hardy things, familiar friends like barley and leeks, and then new experiments. You reach for the pouch, the cinnamon pouch. It's almost empty now, just dust and aroma, but it represents something bigger. You gather the herb circle. You bring the strange seeds gifted in silence, tiny black beads from Edith's brother, who swears a monk owed him a favor, seeds from the forest woman, seeds no one can quite identify. We try a corner, you say. If it grows, it grows. There's quiet nodding, so you dig. Not deep, just enough. And while your hands are muddy, your head is full of meals that don't exist yet. Spiced bean stew, carrot mash with roasted seeds, flatbread with crushed herbs baked into the crust. You're not the only one dreaming. Across the village, the pie woman rebuilds her cart. Matilda 2.0. Her new pies come in layers now, onion and root, egg and mustard. She even tries a sweet one, dried apple with barley syrup. Your mother, who once scoffed at anything but boiled cabbage, now asks, "Do we still have that dried mint?" Even the pig has become a connoisseur, turning its snout up at plain scraps. You caught it chewing on a nettle bundle the other day, like it was contemplating mouthfeel. And then, one bright morning, your herbs sprout. Tiny, shy, hopeful. You fall to your knees beside the bed and stare, just stare. Because these leaves aren't just leaves. They're proof. Proof that flavor can root, that knowledge can grow, that a peasant's garden can be more than just survival. It can be a choice. Historians still argue whether medieval peasants had true autonomy over what they grew. Some claim the manor dictated it all. Others suggest that in the corners, the hedgerows, the hidden beds, people grew what fed not just their bodies, but their souls. You believe that now. And so, you begin a ritual. Each morning, a new herb, a small taste, a scribble in the dirt ledger beside the door, a circle if it's good, an X if your stomach rebels. By midweek, you've created a chart. It's terrible, but it's yours. You share your findings with the group. Edith shows you how to sun-dry the leaves faster. Branwen invents a game where you close your eyes and guess the flavor. You're terrible at it. You love every second. Evenings become testing time. You bring dishes to each other's homes. Try this with nettle. Too bitter? Maybe if we mash it first. Next time we toast the seeds. You laugh more than you eat. Sometimes you fail. Sometimes you cough. Once, someone spent 3 hours talking to a chicken after a bad berry experiment. But no one stops. The joy of experimentation becomes addictive. And through it, you start noticing the world differently. The forest isn't just trees now, it's a pantry. The wind isn't just cold, it carries scent. And the people around you, they aren't just survivors, they're chefs, they're thinkers, they're risk-takers who've decided that life should be seasoned. Even the Reeve begins to notice. At first he mocks it. Oh, trying to turn turnips into tarts, are we? Then he samples a flatbread Branwen gives him at a feast. He eats 3. After that, he says nothing. But he doesn't stop you either. That's all the permission you need. And then, just when the world starts turning green again, something extraordinary happens. Your little garden, your scrappy corner of soil and stubbornness, blooms. Not all of it. Some plants fail, some never sprout. A few grow in the wrong direction like they're trying to escape. But one row, vibrant, bushy, fragrant. You crush a leaf between your fingers. The scent lifts into the air like a prayer. Basil. Actual, honest basil. You're not even sure how it got here. Maybe one of the seeds wasn't what it claimed. Maybe the soil remembered something the rest of the world forgot. But it's here, now, and you're never letting it go. That night, you make stew. Barley, turnip, onion, basil. You stir it slowly, whispering thanks. You serve it to your family, to your neighbors, to anyone who will sit long enough to chew. You don't tell them what's in it. You just watch their faces change. Not in shock, in recognition, because for the first time in months, maybe years, they taste something that says, you deserve more than hunger. The basil is your pride now. You guard it like treasure. You talk to it sometimes, just to see if it grows faster when complimented. It does. You're sure of it. And you're not the only one with a miracle patch. Edith's beans have taken off in a way that makes no sense. Branwen's fennel smells so strong it startles the chickens. Even the pie woman is growing her own time. You all meet weekly now, no longer in secret, but in quiet celebration. The forest is greener, the food is brighter, and the circle has grown. There are men now. At first, they came out of curiosity, then hunger, then wonder. You watch as Tom, the stonemason who once mocked your leaf water, adds rosemary to his lentils like he invented flavor. One evening, you roast beets over coals, slice them thin, and sprinkle them with a handful of crushed garlic leaf. The color alone makes everyone stare. Someone whispers it looks like feast food. That night, around the fire, the idea finally takes root. What if you made one? A real feast. Not a wedding, not a holy day. Just a celebration. Of food. Of spring. Of everything you've quietly built in the soil while the rest of the world wasn't looking. You all vote. Unanimously. It's happening. You pick a date 2 weeks out. The moon will be full, the frost should be gone. And if it isn't, well, you've survived worse. The planning begins immediately. You offer basil. Matilda donates pie crusts. Edith volunteers the clearing by the stream. A boy offers to catch eels. Someone else promises a song. The menu grows longer than your brother's chore list. Flatbread with herbs, onion mash, turnip stew with vinegar and honey, and something no one's tried before, roasted carrots glazed in barley syrup, sprinkled with toasted seeds. Historians still debate whether peasants held community feasts outside religious festivals. Some point to harvest celebrations, Others say food scarcity made it unlikely. But here you are, poor, dirty, tired, and building something deliciously unnecessary. It feels revolutionary. The week leading up to the feast is chaos. You stir, you mix, you trade, you laugh until your ribs ache. At one point, you catch your brother standing over the basil, holding a spoon and mumbling, "Just looking." You swat him with a ladle. Even your mother helps now. She's found her rhythm again, kneading dough while humming an old song you'd forgotten she knew. And you feel full, not of food yet, but of purpose. The day of the feast arrives with a clear sky and the scent of onions in the wind. You carry your stew pot like a crown. The path to the clearing is lined with baskets, bowls, and makeshift platters. Someone has hung ribbons from tree branches. Children dart between legs with sticky hands and berry juice mouths. You take it all in, and then you taste. It's not perfect. Some dishes are too salty. One pie collapsed. A jug of ale rolled down the hill and into the stream. But everything is offered. Everything is shared. You watch as Branwen cries over a single spoon of carrot glaze, as Tom breaks off a piece of flatbread and says quietly, "My mother used to make this." Even the Reeve shows up. He says nothing, just sits on a stump, chewing slowly, eyes darting like he's not sure whether to fine you or thank you. You hand him a bowl anyway, because tonight, no one goes hungry. You play a game where everyone guesses ingredients. There are more wrong answers than right, and someone insists cinnamon comes from tree worms. You let them believe it. Later, as the stars rise and the fires dim, people begin singing, not hymns, not chants, just songs about soil and soup and saints who probably never saw a beat in their lives. You lie on the grass, belly full, head spinning with joy, and you realize something that chills and warms you all at once. You made this happen, not alone. But still, you planted a seed that grew into this, into laughter, into invention, into flavor. You remember the pottage from months ago, the tasteless sludge that started all this. You remember the mushroom monk, the spice trader, the whispering woodswoman, the cautious first foragers, and the fear that nearly ruined everything. And you remember the first time you dared to taste something new. All of that led to this moment, where no one is begging, where no one is blaming, where food is no longer just a sentence, it's a song. You turn to Branwen. Next time, you whisper, "We try pickled eggs." She groans. You both laugh until your sides ache. The feast winds down, but the feeling doesn't. It will come back tomorrow, in kitchens, in gardens, in shared seeds, and whispered recipes, scratched into walls and passed between palms. A flavor revolution in muddy boots. And it started with you. Morning after a feast is always a strange kind of quiet. Not solemn, not hungover, just slow. Like the whole village has collectively exhaled and now doesn't quite know what to do with itself. You wake with basil in your hair and flour on your cheek. You're not sure if it's from cooking or from one of the children trying to decorate the pig again. Either way, it feels like a badge of honor. Your brother is still asleep, half wrapped in a blanket that smells like onion mash and smoke. Your mother is humming again. You step outside, and for the first time in months, the earth feels soft beneath your feet. Not threatening, not frozen, inviting. And your little garden? It's thriving. Basil's taller. The chives are standing proud. Even the strange experimental sprigs, The maybe coriander, the possibly fennel, have decided to show up like late guests to a good party. You kneel and run your fingers through the soil, whispering thanks to no one in particular. Maybe the wind, maybe the saints, maybe just yourself. Because let's be honest, you earned this. Later that day, you meet the herb circle in the clearing. It feels different now. Not secret, not fragile, established, like something that could last. You all bring leftovers, if there's such a thing as leftovers when everyone cleaned their plates. There's talk of preserving herbs, of building a shared drying shed, of writing down recipes with symbols you've all learned to interpret. You propose an idea. What if we made a book? There's silence, then laughter. Not cruel, not dismissive, just surprised. None of us can write, Edith says. Not yet, you reply. Because why not? You've already taught yourselves how to forage, blend, cook, and organize a feast from roots and curiosity. Why stop there? Historians still debate how much written knowledge existed among the lower classes in medieval Europe. Some argue literacy was rare, especially among women, but marginalia, little scribbles in the sides of manuscripts, suggest a hidden world of knowledge, passed quietly and creatively. And if monks could doodle pigs in armor, surely you can record a soup recipe. Branwen volunteers a cousin who knows letters. The plan forms: a shared ledger, pages stitched from cloth, charcoal ink, diagrams of flavor pairings. You will make the first cookbook no one ever asked for. You spend days collecting recipes. You invent a rating system, stars carved into wood, 1 for filling, 2 for tasty, 3 for worth stealing. Your flatbread earns 3. You feel pride in your chest, warm and full, and then it rains. Not a drizzle, a downpour. The kind of rain that turns paths into rivers and roofs into jokes. It soaks your herb bed, collapses the drying racks. The stream rises fast and ugly. Chickens flee uphill. You hear Branwen shout something about carrots trying to swim. For a moment, it feels like everything is about to wash away. But then, something beautiful happens. People start showing up to your house with armfuls of herbs, with soggy baskets, with scribbled symbols on damp wood. No one asks, no one hesitates. They just bring everything inside. You light the fire. You dry what you can. You set up pots. Your brother hangs a bundle of sage above the pig's head like it's a saint. The pig seems unimpressed. Soon your cottage smells like a festival again. Smoke, thyme, wet earth, soup. Everyone's soaked, but everyone's smiling. This is the real feast. The one no one planned. The one built not from ambition, but from instinct. Because now, when things go wrong, people don't just survive. They gather, they share, they flavor their chaos with community. By nightfall, the rain slows. The stream retreats. The carrots are retrieved, soggy but salvageable. And your floor has never looked more like a spice market in a thunderstorm. You serve tea steeped with mystery mint and rainwater. It tastes like triumph. You fall asleep with 10 people on your floor and basil in your dreams. And when you wake up, sunlight. Actual, honest sunlight. You step outside and find the garden battered but alive. Nothing drowned. Everything held on. Like you. Like all of you. And suddenly you know, the feast wasn't a one-time thing. It was a beginning, a harvest to come. It's almost summer now. You can smell it in the air. Warm, rich, heavy with growth. The kind of scent that makes you close your eyes and feel like the world is slowly, finally unfolding for you. And your little patch of dirt, it's practically a miracle. The basil has flowered. The time's gone a bit wild, creeping along the garden edge like it owns the place. Even the mystery herbs have decided to behave, sprouting in confident clumps, clearly proud of themselves. Your mother kneels beside you as you tend the rose. She touches a leaf. "We never used to grow this," she murmurs. You smile. "We do now." Behind you, someone whistles. It's your brother. He's made a stew from yesterday's leftovers. Yes, again. But this time he's added crushed chive flowers, just for color. You all eat together in the shade of the cottage. It's quiet, simple, warm, and good. You wouldn't have believed it months ago if someone told you this moment was coming, that one day you'd sit in your own garden, full and at peace, with nothing but herbs and sunlight and lazy chewing sounds for company. But here you are. The road to this moment wasn't easy. It was made of frost-bitten mornings and questionable mushrooms and soups that nearly killed someone, of whisper networks and forest women, and one spice trader who vanished with your curiosity still trailing behind his cart. You think back to that first meal of winter, the one that tasted like despair. You think of the monastery kitchens, the borrowed ideas, the first laugh after a minty disaster, the secret herbs passed in bundles, the cookbook that smells faintly of vinegar and hope. And you realize something. You've changed, not just in what you eat, but in how you live. You've learned to listen to the woods, the wind, the women beside you. You've learned to risk flavor, to risk joy, to create even when the world seemed determined to silence you with blandness. Historians still debate what peasants valued most: survival, faith, family. They forget to mention flavor. But here, under this sun, with your stomach full and your hands fragrant, you know it matters. Flavor is freedom. A knock interrupts your thoughts. You look up. It's Branwen, holding something behind her back like a mischievous child. "You busy?" she asks. You raise an eyebrow. She reveals a loaf. It's slightly burned, uneven, but you'd recognize that smell anywhere. Honey and basil. You both laugh until your eyes water. You slice it together. It's terrible, absolutely terrible, but it's yours. That evening, you walk the garden one last time before bed. The pig snuffles at the fence. The stars blink overhead like soft promises. The basil sways in the breeze. And for the first time since that cold, gray morning months ago, you feel something close to peace. Not because everything's perfect, but because you're not afraid of imperfection anymore. You've weathered the hunger, the suspicion, the storms. You've built a life that includes flavor and laughter and basil-stained fingers. You made it through the winter, and spring didn't save you. You saved yourself. The garden settles into sleep. The last golden light fades, stretching long across the crooked stones and moss-soft paths that brought you here. You step inside the cottage, careful not to wake the pig. The fire has burned low, casting flickering shadows on walls that smell faintly of mint and ash. You sit quietly by the hearth, your hands still scented with thyme, your sleeves dusted in flour from earlier laughter. Outside, a breeze stirs the herbs you hung to dry. They whisper like old friends, promising they'll be here tomorrow, and the next day, and the day after that. You close your eyes. You think of the faces around that feast, of the first bite of something warm on a freezing morning, of basil blooming when nothing else dared to. You feel your heartbeat slow. Your thoughts drift, not forward, not backward, just gently outward toward the woods, the stars, The long story of every person who ever stirred a pot with hope and called it dinner. It's all quiet now. The world has curled in on itself, softened by the slow comfort of survival. And so have you. You did it. You made it through. Sleep now. Let the flavors of your journey linger just a little longer in your dreams. You've earned the rest.